So, Mr. President, dear Volodymyr, dear ministers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for this technical delay. I want to say, Volodymyr, how important this moment is. I am very glad to welcome you in Paris at this important and difficult moment of the conflict. From the very beginning of Russian aggression, France made a clear choice. To unequivocally and continuously support Ukraine. This support is not only a moral obligation, but also an established commitment for the benefit of our collective security, the security of our continent and all Europeans. On the other hand, Russia has independently chosen the path of war. Nothing justified the war. No real threat, only fakes. Through a complete disregard for the truth, with reflexes and instincts characteristic of a state that cannot come to terms with its own history, imperialist and neo-colonial instincts. Today, only Russia has decided to continue this war and even intensify it. You have been constantly demonstrating your real readiness to enter into a truce since May, and all that can be said, all the efforts of recent months, everything is ready to move towards this truce. Only Russia continues the war. And the intensification of strikes on Ukraine's critical infrastructure is further proof of this cynicism and this aggressiveness, because every attack on civilians today is proof that Russia is pursuing the goal of taking control of your territory and not acting in accordance with the obligations it has undertaken. And when Russia says it wants peace and accuses others of hindering it, no one believes it anymore. Russia is an actor in this war. And today this dependence, one might say, Russia's addictive dependence on war, inclines us to become more determined and peace-minded. And this peace must be made by all of us, all Europeans. We must leave no opportunity unexplored, no effort unmade, together with all our European partners, with all the member countries of the coalition of the willing that we initiated here in Paris in July. And with the United States. And with all countries of goodwill that believe in the values of the UN Charter and that approach their obligations to maintain peace with responsibility. And we demonstrated this determination in the first two important moments of your visit. First, at the airbase in Villacoublay, we signed a declaration of intent regarding Ukraine's acquisition of defensive equipment. We base this declaration on the strengthening of our defense cooperation in the context of Russia's aggressive war, as well as on our commitment from the first day of the war to help Ukraine defend itself and strengthen its army and defense potential within the framework of various coalitions led by us, but in which we have actively participated. Whether in the field of artillery or air defense, strengthening the air force, mirages, Caesars, all of this exists, it has proven itself, and it is the foundation of this cooperation. Now we are moving to a new step, to the rapprochement and integration of our defense industries in order to support Ukraine, the modernization of its armed forces, which remain the first line of defense and deterrence of aggression. We will do this in the long term. And we also understand that the regeneration of the Ukrainian armed forces is precisely our defense capability. That is why we have launched such bilateral cooperation and are planning for the next 10 years regarding the acquisition, development, and production of UAVs, UAV interceptors, and guided bombs. And this is about the deliveries that we plan for a 2-year perspective and for 10 years ahead. Next, regarding the acquisition of new SAMP air defense systems of the latest generation. Right now it is still a development, but we agreed that this particular development could be the first to be deployed in Ukraine and operate in Ukraine. Ukraine already knows the characteristics of this system, SAMP, but now it will have new, enhanced characteristics. And then another step is an agreement for 100 Rafale aircraft with full weapons. This is an additional step, after the Mirage 2000 aircraft were transferred and the training of pilots for the Mirage 2000s was carried out. Now the new step is the acquisition of 100 Rafale aircraft with the corresponding training programs for crews and pilots. So our bilateral cooperation will strengthen, and we will also strengthen the aspect of joint production in Ukraine, in particular the production of UAVs and drone interceptors. After that, we will have a separate event, a forum on UAVs, because this is a determinant, a defining moment for the future of Ukraine. Today we see what we can and how we can use our shared potential for the benefit of Ukraine and Europe. We also jointly visited today, as part of this visit, the headquarters of the multinational coalition forces in support of Ukraine. This headquarters has been operating for several weeks, located near Paris under the command of France and Great Britain. This headquarters is the result of our work on security guarantees within the coalition of the willing. I remind you that it is France and Great Britain that preside over this coalition of the willing. We have come up with an action plan, and also 60 planning integrators are working and based in Paris as of today, and they are coordinating specific contributions to the coalition's work on the forces. The goal is the deployment of forces to guarantee security in areas far from the front line after a ceasefire, as well as supporting Ukraine in the regeneration and restoration of the armed forces of Ukraine, in order to prevent and counter the possibility of new aggression. I want to emphasize that we are ready, that everything is progressing according to plan, and for Christmas we plan to move to a new stage in the deployment work. Our visit also confirms that our support is not limited to the military sphere. All the agreements we signed today, as well as the work of the coalition, we are already laying the groundwork for the opportunity to continue accompanying Ukraine on this path. But again, our support is not limited to the military sphere. It also has a civil, economic and humanitarian character. Intergovernmental agreements to strengthen bilateral cooperation were signed in a number of strategic sectors, and the resumption of the bilateral Critical Infrastructure Support Fund was also approved, in particular, support for the energy sector. I also welcome the signing of a contract between Alstom and Ukrainian Railways worth €475 million for the supply of 55 locomotives, financed by the EBRD and the World Bank. These locomotives, which will be manufactured in Belfort, are a concrete manifestation of our long-term economic and strategic partnership in support of a key player in strengthening Ukraine's resilience. We also reaffirmed the need to create conditions for a ceasefire and a just and lasting peace. And we need to act in two directions: increasing support for Ukraine, increasing pressure on Russia to agree to peace. At the European level, we continue to work to meet Ukraine's financial needs for the next 2 years, as promised by the European Council on the 23rd of October. Discussions are ongoing on a reparations loan. There is a path that is consistent with international law, and we continue to work to ensure risk sharing with our international partners, in particular under the G7. We are also working on the terms of our support, in particular on the use of funds that should contribute to supporting Ukraine's military and defense efforts, strengthening the integration of the European and Ukrainian industrial and defense bases with clear criteria for European preference. Support for Ukraine's budget expenditures should be accompanied by tight conditions. This is how the EU can and should continue to provide Ukraine with predictable and stable long-term financial support. We will achieve this, including, if necessary, by looking for new ways, as we have done on other occasions. So, this is support for Ukraine, and it is a signal that we are not tired. There is no European fatigue. We are also determined to continue to strengthen sanctions against Russia, in cooperation with the United States, to weaken its ability to continue hostilities. This also applies to the Russian shadow fleet, against which we continue to mobilize and strive to improve the coordination of our actions to prevent its functioning. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize once again that Ukraine belongs to the European family not only geographically, but also in terms of its values, history and courage. The path to the European Union will be difficult, requiring significant efforts and deep reforms, in particular in the areas of the rule of law, transparency, governance and the fight against corruption. But I believe in the determination of the Ukrainian people to see these reforms through to the end, and I have confidence in President Zelensky that he will accomplish this. France will accompany this process with constancy, demandingness, trust, and openness, because a strong democratic Ukraine integrated into the European Union will make Europe itself stronger. Volodymyr, Mr. President, I want to tell you, and through you, the Ukrainian people, France is on your side. Together with our partners, we continue to work for a just and lasting peace that complies with international law and ensures the security of a sovereign, independent, free and European Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being in Paris again.
Thank you very much, dear Emmanuel. First of all, thank you, dear Mr. President, for such kind words, for such support. And you have been with Ukraine from the very beginning. I am very grateful to you. And Ukraine, Ukrainians, everyone respects France, the French people, and you. Thank you again for all the support that your state, your people, and you personally have shown since the beginning of this war and on a daily basis. No matter what. Thank you. Dear guests, dear journalists, ladies and gentlemen, dear France. You know, I am grateful to the President that France is with Ukraine, that Ukraine is not alone now, not alone in its defense. And that is exactly why we can count on the end of this war, because we have friends with us. France is our friend, and for a dignified end to the war. Putin has been fighting against Ukrainians for many years. Years of hybrid war, years of full-scale war. Russia has many resources and does not count its human losses at all, inflicting constant strikes. But we do everything to have protection. France and all free Europe are with us. We are helped by the United States and other countries of the world, from Canada to Asian countries, from Japan to Latin American countries. We have created one of the largest coalitions for the defense of life. And I thank Emmanuel for that, and all the partners. And such strong coalitions that have never existed before. The Ukrainians gave this unifying impulse, precisely such an impulse to Europe and to others in the world, and we receive assistance thanks to this. Unity works. That is why we can shoot down Russian missiles, we can stop Russian assaults every day at the front. We are restoring our energy sector. It is very difficult for us, but we are restoring all this, our infrastructure, when Russia destroys it. And most importantly, we are also giving other nations hope that Russia will not succeed in making war the new normal. Deportation and abuse of people. Ukraine is not alone in its defense, not on its own. And France knows very well what this means for us, and how important it is that these are the words spoken to France on June 18, 1940 by General de Gaulle. And that it worked. Defenders of life should always not be alone. And I thank you, Emmanuel, for the support of France that is always effective, completely practical, and truly gives strength, gives hope. Today our meeting adds to our defense just such elements, effective, practical, strong elements. Agreed upon arrangements have been prepared, and today important documents are being signed to significantly strengthen our defense capabilities. And first, Ukraine will be able to receive 100 Rafale F-4 aircraft, very powerful French radars, and 8 SAMP-T air defense systems with 6 launchers each. These are details, probably technical details for some, but for us they are important. Every launcher is a protection for every life. This is very important. Missiles and guided bombs necessary for our protection. I want to stress the importance of this agreement. This is a strategic arrangement that will work for 10 years from next year. We understand all the basics of this arrangement. Political, financial, industrial. This is a historic agreement. It is very valuable that France is taking such a step to achieve real guaranteed security in Europe. Second, today, together with the President of France, we met with representatives of defense companies. We are very grateful, and we have had time to discuss some specific details of technological cooperation. But the main thing is that we have determined the direction, namely, we will together increase the industrial and technological potential of Ukraine and France. And this is not just about defense, it is literally strength in life, because it means jobs for our people, development for businesses, and growth for communities. And third, we are strengthening our logistics, we are strengthening transport in Ukraine. And today we have another very important agreement for the purchase of 55 new electric locomotives in France. And this is an agreement between our Ukrainian railways, we welcome everyone, and the French company Alstom. And we are determined to continue this area of cooperation with France. Today we begin an important and meaningful security path. I am absolutely sure that we will be able to achieve the results we need. Thank you, Emmanuel. We thank France once again, and I thank you for the new defense package that is being prepared at the end of this year. It also strengthens Ukraine. And, of course, today we will talk in detail about how we can reactivate diplomacy, the negotiation process, the pressure process, to create the necessary conditions for peace. A peace worthy of Ukraine, worthy of Europe. There are now some important things, important ideas, proposals that we need to discuss with Emmanuel. I am sure that Ukraine must be strong and peaceful. And so it will be when we have such strong friends as France. Thank you, Emmanuel, for this invitation and for this result of this visit. Glory to Ukraine.
Monsieur le Président, bonjour. Tarek Kaye pour France 24. Une question justement sur les Rafales. Peut-être si vous pouvez nous donner quelques détails.
Regarding financing, Who will pay for this? And also, what is the timeline to expect to see the first Rafales in the skies over Ukraine? And isn't this decision too late, given the situation on the front in Ukraine? And also, perhaps, to raise the bar even higher, will we not today make France a co-belligerent country?
No. You yourself said in your question. Some say it's too late to help Ukraine, others, too early. And I just think that this is the right moment. You know that we have already transferred the Mirages 2000 to Ukraine. Other countries have already transferred other combat aircraft, combat aviation, and air component to Ukraine. So now all these components only complement each other and strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities, and this is a very important component. The contract we signed today fits into a new aspect, a new moment, the moment of regeneration and restoration of the armed forces of Ukraine after a ceasefire. So that Ukraine's armed forces are strong and able to deter any possibility of new aggression. And that is why we decided today to plan how to strengthen the Ukrainian Air Force with new means. And do you remember, by the way, that the first call from President Zelensky was to close the sky? To help with this. When a ceasefire and peace are signed, we must absolutely restore and fully regenerate the Ukrainian forces, including the Air Force, so that they can counter any new aggression. That is why we need to set up long-term financing today. How do we plan to do this? We plan to do our own financing, our own funds, within the framework of the law on military planning, which we will invest in this project. We also hope for cooperation within the framework of European instruments in the field of defense, in particular the SAFE instrument, where we want to give more European preference and specifically sponsor defense. And in addition, the ERA instrument, the ERA fund, where we want to direct funds specifically to defense needs. All of this will be, so to speak, complementary in the long term, and it will all depend on the stage of program implementation. But it is very important for us, for France, to participate in such a program. It is very important for us today to have and strengthen European defense capabilities so that Ukraine is strengthened, but also European defense is strengthened. And that is why we want to use European funding for this.
Irina Kondrachuk, 1+1. Mr. President, question for you. Actually, we heard from President Macron in detail what they are giving, what we can return with, what we will purchase. I would like to hear from you on the subject as well. What do we still need to prevent new attacks, to preserve what we have now? So, were we heard on everything we asked for, and can you list what that is? Thank you.
Thank you. We will not list specifically. We do not prepare our enemies to understand the size of the packages with which certain states support us. And the number of missiles, some general things about missiles and the number of things that can be said, we are talking about. And some things we simply don't have the right to say. We talk about some things a little later when it is already on our territory because all of this is a threat, even the logistics of certain supplies is a threat for strikes. Therefore, there is a strong defense package and support for Ukraine. There are Rafales, and I am sure this is a historic decision. And regarding what can strengthen us, I will tell you, this is a very serious fleet that we are building for Ukraine. For example, the pilots who already have experience on the Mirages, we know very well that they will not spend a year training on the future Rafales, but will transition very quickly. And we talked about it before. And there are a lot of such things. We talk about the new generation of SAMP-T. We operate with SAMP-T, thank you, Emmanuel. And the new generation is a very serious level. You know that we operate with Patriots against ballistics. The new level of SAMP-T is against enemy ballistics. And I can't tell you about the dates, certain delivery dates for this product, which is very important to us.
Dunya Tenga, CNews. After many years of fighting and a lot of effort has been wasted, do you think the purchase of Rafales will help end this war? And I also wanted to ask, in a few years, 3 years, you will no longer be in the Élysée Palace, Mr. President Macron. Do you think the assistance will be further specified after you leave the presidency and your followers may have less ambitions to engage?
I think, let's measure each day by the standard of that day. I think that the last months have been marked by those decisions that were turning points. That today all Europeans have united with the US and key partners, and that we are all focused on increasing pressure on Russia, and the decision made by the US regarding oil sanctions on major companies, they have already begun to take effect. We have increased our pressure on the shadow fleet, because today it is precisely the source of funding of this war that needs to be cut off. And we will continue the pressure, but we will continue in dialogue with the United States. And this is what helps us today to hold the defense and make decisions in the short term, to transfer them. But what we adopt for the long term, we must also do in parallel, because there will be no sustainable and lasting peace if we do not provide all the forces of guarantee, provision and strong military capabilities. Because if Ukraine were a military power, this would not have happened in 2022. Therefore, that is why you need to be decisive. And, first of all, I am particularly determined to first achieve this peace through sanctions and through the fight against the shadow fleet and through the engagement of partners. And then every European country is, of course, democratic countries, societies that make decisions democratically. But I think those who said that we shouldn't support Ukraine because everything would finish in 24 hours, in a day, were wrong. We see that concrete aid is taking shape, and our efforts are taking shape as well. I think we should be happy with that. And the Atlantic support we have now will be more sustainable.
Bonjour. Good afternoon. Lydia Turin, Ukrinform. Mr. President, I have a question for you. Did you and Mr. President Macron raise the topic of a reparations loan? I think, of course, you did. How far have the negotiations on this issue progressed? And can we say that this long-term, promising agreement signed today includes the use of these funds for the purchase of military equipment? And, of course, I have to ask you because my French colleagues promised to ask, but for some reason they didn't. Are the measures taken so far enough to cleanse the management system of corruption, and what will be the next steps?
Thank you for asking. First of all, regarding funding, in fact, President Macron said that there are SAFE programs, there are ERA programs. SAFE should be used more for co-production. And even in the Rafale program we are considering the possibility, if we are technically ready, of co-production of these aircraft and parts at some point. And it is very important for us, as well as drone co-production. And we want to, and we will, use the SAFE program in this direction. Also, regarding frozen assets or reparation loans, we definitely said that we would very much like to. And we expect, I believe that in the end we will still be able to reach an agreement and push this issue. To use Russian assets specifically for the European defense package, for Ukrainian production, and mostly for air defense systems from the United States of America. Therefore, I think it is fair to use frozen assets for projects such as the ones we agreed on with President Macron today. Is it enough? No, not enough. We will continue the relevant actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your attention.